That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and making this your channel of choice today. I'm your host, John Greenwald Jr., founder and creator of the Black Vault. And today we are talking about a formerly classified, although it's still primarily classified, briefing on UAP by the older, now defunct UAP Task Force for NASA. Now, this has been a story that I've kind of chased here for a couple of years, and that's simply because you have to get documents, read the documents. A lot of times people will dismiss them because they're heavily redacted, but you look for every little thing that you can to build off of it, file more requests, and see what you can come up with. Now, in this particular show, what I'm going to do is dissect not only the documents, but for you FOIA people out there, just kind of give a little bit of background on exactly how this unfolded, how I got to the documents, and why I say you really do have to look at every single character on these documents, even though that some may be heavily redacted. You got to look at everything and you got to see what you can glean from it, what you can build off of it, and kind of go from there. So let me go ahead and pull up some visuals for you guys. Again, we are talking about this classified NASA briefing and the documents that recently came out. For those who read my articles, I did write about this last week, but I aim to kind of go into a little bit more detail today and discuss a little bit more in depth with you. Now, first, a little bit of housekeeping stuff here for those taking notes or for those who want to fact check me. This was the result of two different Freedom of Information Act requests that were filed to the U.S. Navy. Now, the two requests that I filed were separated by quite some time. Again, it just was by chance that when they processed both of them, the documents were related. So they processed it and essentially closed both at the same time. You'll see those letters in a moment. But the first case asked for all communications, emails or otherwise, between the UAP Task Force and NASA. It was fairly straightforward. It was a wide net. And again, I was just looking for any of those communications between the two just to see what came up. Those are what I call FOIA fishing expeditions, simply because you want to see, without too much specificity, what you can get your hands on. Why? Because as you'll see, you cast those wide nets, you get leads for future cases. One of those cases was the second one that got responded to. That was asking for a classified slide deck on UAP that was created by Jay Stratton. We know that by the documents that have come out in previous cases that I had received, that this was shown to NASA and likely other agencies circa October 2020, around that time frame. But again, created by Jay Stratton. Again, some housekeeping. These were the FOIA letters for both cases. They essentially combined them both, as you can see. Both were October 10th, 2024, so last week as I record this. And they kind of combined both requests, put the documents on their electronic reading room, and there is where I could download them. I hate that they do that. It actually showed up on the reading room prior to me receiving these letters. So sometimes it goes out there and essentially is taken out of context. Sometimes people, not necessarily with these documents, but other releases, because when the Navy dumps the documents on the reading room, there's no context. So a lot of times they're very much misinterpreted by the general public or misrepresented in the media, simply because the Navy does an incredibly bad job. Sorry, Navy. But in fact, to broaden that a little bit, most agencies do a very bad job organizing these reading rooms. So when you download documents, there's kind of no context. You don't know where they came from, why it was requested, and so on. So again, not really relevant to this particular case, but more broadly speaking, that is the issue. So I always kind of cringe when they do that. Now, the root of these FOIA requests stemmed from a large group of emails from NASA, where I had discovered that the UAPTF had reached out to brief NASA. Now, I'm going to read you this email because, again, this was kind of one of the motivating pieces of evidence that allowed me to file additional cases to not only NASA, but to the Navy. In this particular email, briefing on activities of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or UAPTF, at the request of the UAPTF, Joel Montalbano, Margaret Kiefer, or Kiefer. I'm going to go with Kiefer on this. Suzanne Gillen and I was being Mike Gold, who at the time was the associate administrator within the Office of International Interagency Relations. Those names will receive a briefing on activities of the task force via secure VTC. Per a public announcement on August 4, 2020, Deputy Secretary of Defense David L. Norquist approved the establishment of the UAPTF, the Department of the Navy, under the cognizance of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, leads the UAPTF. Additional information can be provided on the appropriate system. Mike Gold. Now, just for some context for those who don't live and breathe this kind of stuff, the UAP Task Force is now disbanded. This was one of the older groups that operated a couple years ago that was kind of an unofficial effort that led into an official effort that then led into other efforts like the what they call AOI MSG, which nobody really talks about because we don't know what they really did. But then ultimately what we know now is Arrow. So it was kind of like one of those precursor efforts that was out there investigating UAP. It just became, as we're led to believe, more structured and better funded as time went on. All of that is kind of debatable, if you ask me, but that's kind of the official line on the progression of this. So this is looking back in time a little bit. Again, Arrow being a different entity run by different people, the UAPTF is what we're focusing on here in this particular time frame. Now, let's get into the documents themselves. This goes back to September 14th, 2020. Now, you'll kind of notice here that even the classification is redacted of how high of a level of classification this was. I'll talk about that more in a minute, but you can see here the email slides, slides attached, but everything else was redacted. The interagency task force here, part of the Office of Naval Intelligence, we could probably take a guess that this is probably Jay Stratton or somebody who worked very near to him. 2 days after that, good afternoon. Thank you all for your assistance in getting us connected on Monday. I'm sorry the meeting ended so abruptly, but we timed out. We wanted to follow up and thank you for all your time. We appreciate the overview. We don't know who this was from. We don't know who it was to. They're hiding all of that. So if you can see a picture being painted here, even going back 4 years, they don't want to tell you what the UAPTF was doing, who they were specifically talking to, and what they were talking about. Now, there are some people out there that have kind of, shall we say, made a joke about these types of efforts, not only with Arrow, but even prior, being unstructured, being essentially those that were into the topic, but they weren't really contributing anything of value. I can tell you from my perspective and doing, 10,000 plus FOIAs on all sorts of different topics, if this was ultimately a joke and there was kind of like really nothing to it, and the people that were running the task force at the time were simply fans of UFOs and not producing anything of value, you wouldn't see this. You wouldn't have a classification even that was redacted. You wouldn't have all of these types of issues when trying to look at the documents. Here's another email from September 18th. Again, we don't know from who. We don't know who it was to. Thank you for the opportunity to brief. Sorry for the issues on our end and the late start. We welcome any expertise you can provide and appreciate your time. So again, we're not really learning anything from this, but this is one of the reasons why I wanted to go through these emails real quick. This is the last one, is because even though the context and content, I should say, kind of really taught us nothing, what we are learning here is that whatever this is, whatever this briefing is, whatever this topic is of UAP, it is still to this day incredibly classified. They want to keep that veil of secrecy, even on an effort that is often minimized and, dare I say, even ridiculed when it came to that task force. Again, some members of the media have kind of taken that route, that these were all just essentially run by people that were fans of UFOs producing nothing of value. Well, the evidence actually says otherwise, that this would be of value, that this goes beyond just sources and methods and techniques of how they took a photo or detected a UAP. Sure, some of that should remain classified. I hate saying anything should remain classified, but I'm not dumb. I mean, I understand that there are national security concerns with that. However, when you see stuff like this, and when you start looking at the evidence, and you'll see more here as the video presentation goes on, we can easily deduce that this wasn't just run by fans of UFOs or sci-fi people, that this was a effort that was producing results that even well after they've left government and the military, and that they are no longer involved in this effort, and this effort is even disbanded at this point, they still don't want to tell you anything, nor do they even want to tell you the classification that it is. And that's what I want to focus on here, is the fact that they won't tell you the classification. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that this is incredibly rare and unheard of. It is. We do see it from time to time in FOIA releases, but a lot of times you'll see one of two things. You'll see the redaction in full, but they don't say classification redacted. That part is kind of silly, and I'm not really sure why they did that. But one of the other things you see is, let's say you'll see the top secret or secret designator on the top, but then next to it is going to be, when it comes to top secret stuff, a code word, a compartmentalized access word that essentially drills down on the level of top secret it is. So just because you have a top secret clearance, you can't just look at everything top secret. That there are special compartmented designators for a lot of these things. You see it a lot with the NSA when it came to the UFO, not UAP, but they would use the proper acronym, if you ask me. But all of their UFO documents were top secret Umbra. Now, Umbra as the code word was classified, I think it was for decades. And one of the mandatory declassification review cases that I did with the NSA got the Umbra designator declassified. So some of the older releases would have top secret and then a black rectangle, and they wouldn't even tell you. Later releases would have top secret and then Umbra beside it, but it would be crossed out because it was partially declassified. So the top secret material was excised, and the document was declassified and released to the public. So those code words can even be classified, as we've seen many times before. So with this, everything is classified. They don't want to tell you anything, indicating that obviously this is some pretty highly classified material and something that they want to keep the lid on. Now, the briefing itself that happened in 2020 through documents, not these that have been released before, but the email that I read to you earlier from NASA, we can figure out who was in the room. Now, from the Navy side, pretty easy. It was likely Jay Stratton. We don't know the list of people who else, but from NASA documents talking to Jay directly, we can determine that was him. The four NASA people that we know were there was Mike Gold. He was, as I mentioned before, the former acting associate administrator for the Office of International Interagency Relations. Joel Montalbano, who was the program manager at the time for the International Space Station. Margaret Kiefer, director of the Export Control and Interagency Liaison Division, and Suzanne Gillen, former associate administrator for legislative affairs. So these, again, were not just curious people. These were people that had quite some duties at NASA. The one that intrigued me the most was the program manager for the space station. So if we're dealing with these balloons and drones and so on and so forth that everybody loves to fall back on, that it's all foreign tech, and sure, that's absolutely part of this equation. There was a reason why the UAP Task Force reached out to NASA, and there was a reason either A, NASA specifically said, hey, we need our program manager for the space station in the room, or B, that the UAP Task Force said, we want to brief the program manager for the International Space Station. However that unfolded, and however that got Joel Montalbano in the room, either way, that's pretty fascinating to me, because what in the space station can help? Now, there's instrumentation on there that certainly is pointing towards Earth. That maybe there is something that they can pick up on their sensors. Fine, that's absolutely an acceptable answer. But that then tells us this is going on well beyond the balloons and drones that people like to fall back that this is all about. That clearly they're taking someone from NASA who has intimate knowledge about the space station and the instrumentation on board. My guess is they don't need them, that meaning the DoD or the Navy or whomever. They don't need NASA to focus in on a balloon or a drone of some kind if they can even do that from the space station looking towards us. So there's a lot of unanswered questions there on why they were in the room. But it was intriguing nonetheless, especially when you add that on top of all of the secrecy that we see. There's something definitely very interesting going on. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that room. This was John Stratton, John J. Stratton, as he's known. He has retired from the Navy now. He's no longer involved, but he was part of the Office of Naval Intelligence. He was a senior analyst there, part of the Nimitz Operational Intelligence Center. I can tell you I've dug for years on his emails. I had first discovered his name before anybody had ever come out with him being involved in this topic. The reason I bring that up is, again, you want to look for every single lead that you can, because in an article I wrote quite a few years ago now, his name popped up as being the one that was writing the original statements for the U.S. Navy Public Affairs Office prior to the Department of Defense essentially taking over and making them the exclusive speaker on all things UAP. This was the time when I got a statement from the U.S. Navy from a spokesperson by the name of Joseph Gradisher. It was Jay Stratton, who I later, through again, I'm kind of summarizing months and years worth of FOIA cases and going through documents. It was discovered that this guy by the name of Jay Stratton was the one that actually wrote that statement for the Public Affairs Office. Now, why is that important? Because that's when I started digging on this particular individual and what his role was. I knew he was important because you don't just go to any rando to write statements on behalf of the U.S. Navy. You essentially go to the top, the person that's most knowledgeable. So the U.S. Navy was going to this guy Stratton. Who is that? And that's where I started digging. And then in time, it was revealed that he was the director of the UAP Task Force. And with any program, big or small, in the U.S. government, um, you can find a paper trail that actually will prove that. And later, I had found that proof that he was the director and head of the UAP task force, that it was listed in documents that were obtained via FOIA, and that came out to the general public. So all of that is verifiable history. So it was kind of cool to see all of that play out, that started from this, who in the hell is Jay Stratton, to he was the director or the head of the UAP task force that was doing these classified briefings, that was in charge of all of these things, and obviously was somebody of importance when it came to the UAP topic. So for me, from my seat, to kind of see that play out over the course of years, it's fun. That's why I love doing the FOIA stuff, because I love those types of puzzles and figuring out who's involved, what's involved. And then, of course, we later learned that Dr. Travis Taylor was involved, being one of the stars of the History Channel Skinwalker Ranch show. And then he turns up as working directly with Jay Stratton. So there's all sorts of stuff that you can glean from these documents if you pay attention and read all of the material. Now, here was the briefing itself. Here's the cover page for it. You can see UAP Task Force overall classification of this briefing is, as you guessed it, classified as well. The classification is redacted. They won't tell you. This name is redacted, director of UAPTF. I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that says Jay Stratton under there. Why they redacted it, I'm not really sure. The document I just showed you, obviously the government has already acknowledged that. So why redacted? Who knows? This was the first slide of the briefing, UAP Task Force. This is the one with the most meat on it, the most information, because you'll see very quickly this remains heavily classified. But it gave a little bit of background for you. I'm going to read it, especially for the audio podcast version of this. But for you guys, go ahead and read along with me if you're watching the video itself. 2020 NDAA directed that Naval Intelligence lead a UAP Task Force, UAPTF, to, quote, collect, exploit, and analyze operational and scientific and technical data of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, unquote. UAP, any aerial phenomenon that cannot immediately be identified. UAPs reported within the United States and around the world. More bullet points: safety of flight, national security, and then next to national security is a redacted line. Next bullet point: effort, standardize and destigmatize reporting, and then more redacted information. That one was intriguing. What is this destigmatized reporting, and then what's redacted after that? Not really sure. Some other bullet points here: we use reporting from operator interactions to cue various other advanced means of tracking and analysis. Next point: the UAPTF uses a combination of subject matter, expertise, and specialized tools to identify, collect, investigate, and report on these contacts. The results of the data are used to redacted, inform other U.S. government partners, and develop concepts for addressing the problem. That was a very intriguing redaction to me. I'll read it again. The results of the data are used to redacted. Used to what? Why can't they tell us? I mean, used to identify, used to blank inform other U.S. government partners. That one didn't make sense to me at all for being redacted under national security concerns. But the next box here is what was even more intriguing: stigmas associated with reporting UAP. The first: don't want to be the, quote, UFO or, quote, tinfoil hat guy. The second one is fully redacted, also for national security reasons. What, when it comes to stigma about UAP, is classified and something that they can't tell you or I? That was another very intriguing redaction to me. The third one: don't want to lose training. Now, the box over here, the partners to the UAP task force, was also pretty intriguing. OSD was it research and evaluation? Now I'm drawing a blank on the acronym. This is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. Now it's INS, which is Intelligence and Security. R&E, forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on that acronym. I think it's research and evaluation, but regardless, we can easily Google that. Northcom/NORAD, the Coast Guard, Space Command, DARPA, NASA, FAA, FBI, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, the Army, law enforcement, which was intriguing because I'm wondering how much law enforcement played a role in feeding information to the UAP task force. Some state sunshine laws, if there's any state sunshine users out there, maybe we should all kind of come together and formulate a way to attack that. That's something that I don't use a lot. As much as I use the federal FOIA, I don't use state sunshine laws a lot. And that's what you would need for local law enforcement if that's what this is in reference to. It does not seem to me that these are potential partners as the task force went on, but rather partners, as you can see listed here. So maybe there are some other documents from the local level where they were seeing things that were being fed to the U.S. Navy. Obviously, law enforcement arms of the military exist. So I would guess that that may pertain as well. But I would think that that would come under the services. So I think that this was different. Something to note, maybe nothing, maybe something to look into for all those state sunshine people out there. Part of the intelligence community: NASIC, DIA, NRO, NGA, NSA. But look at this one, the second one on the list, they won't tell you. This is also reminiscent of the UAP reports that came out in the last couple of years, that they list all the agencies that contributed to the report, and there has been one redacted in the past. So this wasn't too surprising, but worth pointing out again. Why is it that that this is not something they can tell us? So there's an agency involved now in UAP that they don't want to tell us. Is it CIA? Is it FBI? I see the chat talking about DOE, FBI. Yeah, it could absolutely be all of the above. But DOE has admitted that they've been involved in this. I mean, I think that there was kind of an embarrassing moment in one of the hearings, if I remember correctly, with the director of the DOE. So none of that is like a classified where you can't say, oh no, we can't admit that the CIA or DOE or FBI or whomever is involved in UAP work. It doesn't make sense to me. So, one of those silly redactions that's worth pointing out. You'll see here there's two lines separated from IC. So probably not other government agencies, but what here is also redacted for national security. Um, uh, I was just going to mention you, Grant Levac. I see you in the chat that this is potentially reference to the Five Eyes Alliance, maybe something like that. Grant, always good to see you, bud. And others, industry slash academia. So that's probably maybe their list of people, their consultants. I have discovered a document that talked about a UAP task force list of consultants, but we don't know who was on that list. Obviously, Travis Taylor is either high up on it or somebody who works very closely with the list of people. But obviously, there's some industry and academia that are involved. Maybe that's what he's referring to here in the briefing of their consultants. Not really sure, but interesting to see nonetheless. Now we get into obviously something they don't want to show you. You can see here the next slide is entirely redacted with the exception of the header, or at least part of the header, reported sightings of UAP, and then redacted. So whatever comes after UAP there, if you're not watching the visual version, there's just a word or words past UAP that they won't tell you. Then the entire slide is redacted. Big black box that says B1. Somebody posted on social media. I don't know if they were joking or not. It's a brilliant idea. A t-shirt with, it was all black t-shirt with this B1 on it. And I thought it was brilliant. I've never seen one before. If you guys know if somebody's selling it, please let me know. I will buy one from them. I just didn't want to take the idea and make one for myself, but man, that was just a cool idea. But this big black box across the entire slide hides it all from you. Now, the next one we can read a lot. Now, for those who don't know, this is the text of this has actually been released by the US Navy before. I had received it along with other FOIA requesters as well. Not part of this briefing. Didn't look like this either. It was simply the text of this slide on the Tic Tac case from 2004. Now, we all know this is one of the most famous, arguably most famous UFO cases of present day. And if you're involved in this topic, you likely know exactly what I'm referring to, but I'm going to go through the bullet points anyway if you're not familiar with it. Again, these are bullet points, so not a story per se, but it gives the facts about the Tic Tac case on 14 November 2004. It was part of the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, specifically the USS Princeton, the E-2 Hawkeye, VMFA 232, VFA 41, and the USS Louisville, all part of that particular case. 30 nautical miles off the coast of Mexico, that's southwest of San Diego. Next bullet point, it was, quote, solid white, smooth, with no edges. It was uniformly colored with no, I'm not sure how to say that. I'm going to probably stick my foot in my mouth here. I'm not sure how to say that word, so I'm not even going to try. Pylons or wings. It was approximately 46 feet in length. Don't make fun of me. I'm not used to that word. Pilots reported the incident through intelligence personnel. There was a large amount of harassment and ridicule throughout the Nimitz. Reporting terminated at Third Fleet. There was no process to share the reporting. Somebody in the chat, nacelle. That's new to me. I'm not a Navy guy. I'm not entirely sure what that would be, but nacelle. So thank you, Aaron. Thank you, writer of minds. I appreciate that. Sorry, just didn't want to make an idiot out of myself and try and guess. Reporting terminated at Third Fleet. There was no process to share the reporting. Last bullet point, although the debriefs of aircrew and other personnel within the strike group validated the event, there was very limited data to support technical analysis. So there's the rundown of what the UAP Task Force had on the Tic Tac case. Now, obviously, this goes back to even allegedly. The OSAP days, many, many years prior to when this briefing was created, that they as well had done some research into the Tic Tac case and interviewed witnesses and so on. But even in 2020, when they made this briefing, that essentially was all they knew, and the government is willing to give this out. It's curious to me why they're willing to give this out. I'm not sure it's because that some of the data through Bigelow Aerospace and Bass had kind of leaked with some of the research they had done and those bullet points. Obviously, the witnesses were talking. Why this intrigues me, because it may sound like kind of a dull point and who cares to some people, but look at what they want. We would just went over one slide that's entirely redacted. And here we have a Tic Tac case, which is still to this day, as far as I'm aware, considered unidentified by the US military, that they have no idea what this is, and they're willing to tell us. What is it that they're not willing to tell us? And that always intrigues me when you juxtapose those two things, where um, they'll black out something top to bottom in one slide, and then the next one tell you all about the details of the Tic Tac. That always intrigues me. What it proves, I don't really know, um, but it's intriguing nonetheless. The next slide here, we are right back into redacting nearly from top to bottom. Header, pilot reporting, and then more than half the line is redacted. Underneath that, air crew see the UAP. In this case, they photographed the UAP, dot, 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 and then it's all blacked out. Now, my guess is these are photographs, maybe some text. I mean, that's all just speculation and conjecture. Who knows? But they're talking about photographs of the UAP and absolutely nothing there. All redacted for national security reasons. The next slide, same deal. All redacted for national security reasons, top to bottom, including the entire header. The next slide, the entire header is redacted yet again, but now we see something familiar. UAP are not easily explainable, can quickly overwhelm our aircrew. And we see some visuals of one of the leaked 3 UAP videos, namely the gimbal, and you see 3 screen grabs from that. Underneath the 3 screen grabs from the gimbal video is another section entirely blacked out for national security reasons. You go to the next slide, and you see what are likely 4 different photos with 4 different captions, all of which are redacted with the exception of one photo that's a still frame of a video that we've seen before. This is the green. Some people talk about triangle UFOs, some talk about pyramid UFOs. Others will debunk this, saying that the triangular shape is simply the aperture of the camera, and that's the shape that you see, that this could not be that particular shape, but rather an artifact of the camera. Look, I let people much smarter than me kind of determine all of that and duke it out when it comes to the image analysis. But regardless, we can see that one. But obviously, 3 other photos are classified for national security reasons. Going to the next slide, yet again, we have an entire slide, top to bottom, header included, big black boxes, national security reasons, fully exempted. Next slide, current assessment. The UAPTF has collected redacted reports dated from the last redacted years that describe encounters with UAP. More than half have been detected via multiple sensors. Now, let's back up. They won't tell you how many reports that the UAPTF collected. They won't tell you how many years they had been collecting reports or how far back those go. Why not? See, Arrow even gives out how many cases that they have, or at least rough estimates. What is it about this that they won't tell you the number of cases or how long they've collected them or how far back they go, whichever this is in reference to, all for national security reasons? This is one of the most fun redactions, potential explanations. It's a list of three things, potential explanations for UAP. Number one, entirely redacted. Now, what's redacted about this? Like why? The number one explanation, potential explanation from the UAPTF is fully redacted for national security reasons. Is can they really not say, let's just give the benefit of the doubt that this says foreign technology, Chinese, Russian, whatever, UAVs if they want to go the drone route, balloons if they want to go the balloon route, balloons and drones if they want to tackle both of them in this line. Um, why can't they tell us that? They're quick to release images of Chinese spy craft that are floating above. They're quick to shoot it down and take action. They're quick to release some photos. There is one incident where they went and recovered the debris, and those photos actually do exist. The rest is being hidden, but at least they talk about what they claim those objects were, which were, again, these spy craft, spy balloons with technology on board. Yet with this, they won't even tell you roughly what that potential explanation is. One of the more fascinating redactions, if you ask me, because again, you can sit and think about that for a while. I'll move on, but you can sit and think about that for a while. Think about potential explanations that fit there and think about why they would redact it. It's pretty interesting to kind of play around with those answers. Number two, unknown weather or other natural phenomena. So that's self-explanatory. Number three is exempted, redacted the whole line, but this time it's B5. Now I want to juxtapose these two. Number one was B1. So the number one list, again, national security reasons why they wouldn't tell you. Number three, B5 is a different exemption. The different exemption is essentially internal deliberation. It's in the FOIA world what we call the redacted if you want to exemption. There's really no justification, rhyme, reason, or definition for FOIA exemption B5 other than what the law says. And that's essentially this interagency deliberation. If they're talking about something, if they're creating draft documents that are not final, all of that is subjected to being exempted under B5. So ideas that are not necessarily solidified or supported by the agency, you can argue that B5 could potentially cover those. Why I'm kind of being like vague with exactly what B5 would cover is exactly the reason why we call it the redacted if you want to exemption, because it is the most wildly misused and overused exemption that exists. So it's really frustrating to see that you have all these national security exemptions and then all of a sudden you have a B5 exemption in the middle of it. Why? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's frustrating. It's absolutely frustrating, to say the least. Then you have more than half of the slide down here, all of the content 100% redacted. Next slide, you see that pesky B5 in addition to B1. Now they've redacted the whole slide, citing both exemptions. And the header on this one, plan of action and milestones. So this is what the UAP Task Force wanted to do, and essentially probably, and there's a little speculation also, but when they wanted to do it by, probably some milestone dates, which is not abnormal when you see briefing slides like this, where they give you the milestones and when they want to achieve it by. So it gives them those goals moving forward. All of that is exempted. And this is the most fun slide. Questions? Yeah, I have a hell of a lot because you've redacted pretty much the whole thing. Obviously, the questions, though, were more geared to the briefing itself, probably posed to those four NASA individuals that were in the room, along with anybody else that received this briefing. There's probably quite a few. On a quick side note, I have discovered that it was likely this briefing, or at least something like it, that was recorded onto video. And Jay Stratton, who was likely the one that did it, recorded a video with this briefing or again, something like it. And they won't release that, no portion of it whatsoever, and consider the entire thing classified. That was another thing that I had discovered through the NASA documents that had come out, that that existed, and trying to go after it was no easy task. but after some time, they ultimately denied it. So pretty frustrating that that type of secrecy around all of this, which, if it has easy explanations, should not exist. If you ask me, it's frustrating to see. And it's frustrating to see that it's getting worse, that it's something that there's, you know, not the veil is not lifting, the secrecy is not lessening, the transparency is not increasing. As much as people want to tell you that it clearly is not. It is something that they want to keep a really big lid on, a fat, heavy one that you can't lift off. And they create these types of releases where, look, I'm sorry, if the skeptics were 100% correct and this was all easily explainable, low information zone, drones, balloons, foreign technology, spycraft, or our own tech, these types of things would not exist. And if they did, and those were all the easy explanations, they wouldn't be released to the public in this way. You would have little tidbits where you can piece together, oh, we're talking about unmanned aerial vehicles that are coming from other countries that are plaguing our military, and that's ultimately what all of this is. Why would you be briefing the program manager for the International Space Station if this was that? Like, there's a lot of things when you try and piece it together that just absolutely don't make sense. And with that, it's frustrating to me to see this, but super motivating to continue to dig and try and pull out these puzzle pieces to see what you can come up with. That said, I hope this taught you at least a little bit. It's kind of hard to teach when your document is fully redacted, but at least a little bit about not only the FOIA process that goes into this, but the briefing itself. Because even though this was in this context to NASA, we do know that this was likely given exactly the same way or very similarly to other agencies as well. And those all generate paper trails. And you guessed it, I'm going after those as well. Thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Look, if you like this video, truly appreciate a thumbs up or wherever you're listening to. 5 stars if you're on the audio version is what I aim for. Please give it a quick rating, give it a quick review if you're listening in on the podcast version. And of course, sharing is the absolute best way that you can help me, and that gets the message out, spreads the word out about this channel. I know I don't record as much as I want or as much as some of you want, but I will definitely do my best to get more videos out to you, and those shares, likes, and reviews absolutely help with that. If you aren't aware, if you're watching the video version of this, I do drop a lot of these presentations down to the audio podcast stream. It's pretty much on any audio podcast platform under the Black Vault Radio. And I'll reverse that. If you're listening and have no idea that there's a video presentation involved, please go to theblackvault.com/live. That will bounce you to the YouTube channel where I broadcast live videos. This particular one was recorded live. And that way I can pull in your questions as I see them, if I see them, and try and interact with you as much as I can. And then they're edited down for later video and audio releases. So please make sure you're subscribed to all of the above, because sometimes one of those channels gets something that the other doesn't. So I try and put everything out there. Sometimes, though, time constraints don't allow me. So make sure you're subscribed. And that said, this is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we'll see you next time.